confusing. So thank you everybody for coming out, and I know there was a lot of things happening today, including the the holiday gift exchange, and I'm glad that some of you haven't already broken into some of the goodies that I saw you walking around with that come in packs of 12. So I'm just going to give a really quick introduction about the BEST program, and then I'm going to let Ubada introduce today's speaker. So this seminar is being offered as part of the Virginia Tech BEST program. So BEST, for those of you who don't know, stands for Broadening Experiences in Scientific Training, and it's supposed to bring in speakers and provide activities that will help you in your search for a career path or a career trajectory, whether that be along the academic route or along some other route. So I also wanted to make mention that tomorrow, Dr. Gifford is also going to be giving what we call a mini internship workshop that will be related to the topic of science communications. So we still have a couple of spaces left at that. We have 12 people already attending and room for a couple of more to squeeze into that room. So if you're still interested in attending this mini internship workshop from 9:30 to 12:30 tomorrow, please send an email to Brent Bowden. If you don't,
will be breakfast also?
Yes, there will be breakfast. All right, so without further ado, I will turn this over to Ubada, who is the student that nominated today's speaker.
Hello, everyone. I am a TBMH student. I'm one of you, some of you. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Gifford today. Dr. Gifford is a scientist, physician, science writer. She's a simulated astronaut that's participated in long-term space missions. She has degrees in neuroscience, English literature, biotechnology, medicine, and science journalism, which is a lot. She's in fact been a science journalist since 1997 and been published in several magazines and newspapers, contributed to creation of science documentaries in the National Geographic, History Channel, the BBC, Vice, and Vsauce, which is a YouTube channel, if you guys know it. And she's currently the scientist in residence at the St. Louis Science Center. So I met Dr. Gifford. I first heard of her last year. I read an article saying that 6 scientists are going to be sent to Mars. And then I read more, and I found out that it's not actually Mars. It's Hawaii. It's a volcano in Hawaii, and they set up a simulated colony, what it would be on Mars. It was a Huffington Post. That's why the title was Mars. So yeah, they had 6 scientists. It was 1,200 square feet, I think, a dome. And it was a psychological study to see, how the stresses are on future scientists once we colonize Mars and so on. And she had this unique position of having training in science research, having an MD, and also a degree in journalism. So she was the chief medical officer on that mission. It was 12 months long. I read about it, super fascinated, and then I forgot about it for a year. And then I read another article saying that they're coming back to Earth. I think August it was. And at that point, I'd had already published a couple of articles of my own, and knowing Dr. Gifford's background, I emailed her randomly, and she, I just asked her, if she had advice for science writing, if she had any critique of my own writing, and I got a response within a couple of hours. I think your mission also had a delay, like part of the simulation, 20 minutes? Part of the simulation was even communication was delayed by 20 minutes because from Mars to Earth, it would take the signal about 20 minutes to get here. So the response came from a nasa.gov server, and it said, "We're busy packing up Mars at the moment," because it was the last night of the mission. But let's set up a time to chat later. And I thought that was pretty cool. NASA email. Since then, Shay has been a fantastic source of insight. She's helped me on future pieces that I wrote after that, and continues to be a very valuable person to have for advice. So I appreciate that. And I think the fact that she's here today And the fact that she was willing to humor a young scientist shows her commitment to science education and science communication. So with that, please help me welcome Dr. Sheyna Gifford. Thank you.
That just goes to show when you get a sketchy email, open it if virginiatech.edu is the domain. All right, thank you everybody for coming. I am indeed, as described, Sheyna Gifford. I'm here to talk to you about what you can do with your sciencey brain, all your different options and choices. These were some of mine. If you want to check out my blogs, they're on the bottom. If you want to live tweet this, I'm Humans Are Awesome, missing the last O. Feel free to do that on your phone. Otherwise, please feel free to turn your phone off, or feel free to let it ring. But if it rings, let me answer it. I've talked to all kinds of people. Mothers, fathers, girlfriends, boyfriends, people girlfriends and boyfriends aren't supposed to know about. Babysitters, mechanics, plumbers, so feel free to answer that phone or just join me in turning it off for the duration of what I hope will be a very interesting talk. So, good news and bad news. The Martians have landed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so what was that? That was me and my crew returning after 366 days in simulated space. We spent about a year up here on the bare slopes of Mauna Loa volcano, which used to be an old quarry, still an active volcano. On the other side, behind us is Mauna Kea. That's where the observatories are, and that was our dome, as Ubata said, 1,200 square feet, off the grid on solar panels, no local plumbing, composting toilets only, just like in the movie The Martian. Now, you might ask, how does somebody get to Mars? Well, not in a rocket. I got to Mars by way of being a photojournalist. That was my first job. That led to being a science writer for the same newspaper that hired me to take photographs of its football players. From there, I already was interested in science, wanted to do science, but I didn't know what. So while in between writing and shooting for the newspaper, I used to go sit in at classes at Berkeley. Any class that sounded interesting, I would go just walk in and audit it. And eventually I decided I wanted to be an astrophysicist. So I went to work for NASA, helped build a satellite, that satellite there, HESI, it's so beautiful. Worked on some spacesuits for Mars, and built a supercomputer for the astrophysics department, which is just like a lot of computers strung together to make it act like one big computer. So not as fancy as it sounds, but it was a lot of fun. And that led to a life of crime and research in astrophysics, social psych, and neuroscience for about 10 years. At some point, they show up at your desk, lean over, fold their fingers, and say, "Which would you like, the PhD or the MD?" You go, "Really?" "Oh, yes, you can choose any two." And I said, "Okay, I'll take the MD." So I went and picked up a degree in medicine. On the way, I picked up those degrees. Science journalism came later. That was a fellowship that was granted to me by the University of Southern California, and I'm currently working on an MBA. We can talk about that later if you like. But hey, one thing at a time. So, why on earth would you do all of that? All right, sorry, had to go there. These were all the things that allowed me to achieve a lifelong goal. I didn't sit down when I was 18 and say, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do all this crazy stuff. It wasn't a plan. It just kind of happened. But there were certain things that allowed me to go to Mars and come back and live a life that I really enjoy. One was a simple realization. I had a personal tendency to do exactly what I was told not to do. Now, why is that? Well, it's because people tended to tell you you had to follow a formula. There was a way that you did things. And that just never stuck to me. It was kind of like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall. "Dr. Gifford, there's a way that you do things." Really? I hadn't noticed. Now, that's probably true if you're trying to treat someone for pneumonia or drive a car. But when you're trying to live your life, there isn't a way to do it. Not for you, not for anybody. So having had that realization, and people tended to say I couldn't do all kinds of weird things, like I was a talented writer in school, and so they're like, "Oh yeah, you don't want to study science." I'm like, "Why not?" It's like, "Well, you're going to be a writer." "And? So you're going to go study writing?" I'm like, "Yeah, and science, right?" And they're like, "Why would you want to do that?" All right, fine. People actually told me I couldn't go to medical school because I didn't have good enough grades. It's like, well, I studied astrophysics. I'm not going to have a 4.0. But that didn't actually stop me from going to medical school. So the next realization is action. So I was basically just open to opportunities as they arose, when they come your way. And they do. If you're just sort of open to the idea, I love my life, I love what I do is really interesting, but it's not the end-all and be-all of the universe. There's a world, a universe of things. Maybe there's something else I should be paying attention to. Maybe there's other things I should listen to. So just being open, understanding what I wanted out of each position. I wanted to serve in medicine, but I don't need to be a doctor that goes into work every day and sees a patient every 15 minutes. In fact, I know I don't want that. So I was very honest. Oh. Who am I talking? Oh, who am I talking to today?
That's actually animal care.
Okay. Oh, missed it. All right, fine. All right. So what do you want out of your phone calls, out of your career, whatever it is? And then you network like crazy meaningfully. And Audra and I were talking about this earlier. Networking seems really easy. You meet someone at a party, you get their name, you talk a while, but then nothing ever comes of it, right? That's not really networking. Networking is getting to know somebody. Where are you from?
Alabama.
Yeah, from Alabama. That's cool. I've actually never been to Alabama. What's in Alabama?
Football.
Football. I don't actually know much about football. Do you root for football?
Yes. Because of Alabama.
Because of Alabama. Okay, very good. So you have a little conversation, you get to know somebody, and then you get their card, they get your card. But that doesn't end there. You go home, you scan their card into your favorite cam scanner, you get their email into your address book, and you write them a quick note. Great to meet you today. So happy to see you. Hope we get to meet again. We talked about this, that, and the other. You seem really interesting. You get them on LinkedIn if you can. You follow them on Twitter if they're there. That's networking. Then you've got the person in your network. If you have Google, you put a little note to yourself in the contacts as to who this person is. You ping them, neuroscience, molecular biology, whatever you are. And then when you're like, who is that person I met, that neuroscientist? You type neuroscience into your Google Docs address book, it'll come up. You'll have all the people you've tagged with neuroscience. So that's networking. Yeah, it's exhausting, but that's how you actually keep track of all the thousands of people you meet in your career, if that's what you like and want to do. So that's just for the people who like to network. And being super nice to people. I stand before you today because someone said, hi, I'm a fanboy, but I'm not creepy, I swear.
Fangirl.
Oh, sorry, fangirl. That's not creepy either. And he wanted my help. He just wanted my help. And of course I'm going to give it to him. People love to help each other. So I ask for help, and whenever someone asks me if I can, I give them help. And thus I stand before you today. And completely, not just as a speaker, but as someone who went to Simulated Mars. I only know about the mission because I was helping girls in a bad part of LA stay in school, looked for somebody who was Latina to be a role model, found her, and she was a scientist who'd been on a previous mission. And she recommended me for the next mission. So I am here. I went to Mars, fulfilling a life goal because of charity. I'm here today because of charity. Charity, tender, loving kindness. So help people, and whenever you need to ask for help, because people live for the opportunity to help each other. At least most people do. So, and here's me running around the Seattle Museum of Flight after hours because they were locking the door, and I was like, do I have to leave? Like, nah, stay here. I was like, woo! So running around the Museum of Science, taking pictures with everything because I asked. So just don't be afraid to ask. And drink lots of tea. Oh, tea is good. All right, so you have options. That's mostly what I'm here to tell you today. You have a brain on science, and science has given you many important things. A high tolerance for caffeine, a tendency to be perhaps a little obsessive or compulsive, but it's also given you a lot of options. There are a lot of people who want you. Academia is one that you guys already know about. You can research, you can teach. Okay, but there's a whole other world out there. There's industry. Industry wants you. That's the commercial space industry, SpaceX, these people. They develop all kinds of software and hardware tools. They run missions. But that's just one example. Biopharma wants you. They want you to help develop vaccines and new hearts and all kinds of things, prosthetics that we need to make mankind better. So if you don't want to stay in academia, industry probably wants you. And you can come back to academia. We even have professors here who went and came back, so it's okay. Test those waters. What industry is, if nothing else, is an incubator. Even if you go to a startup and the startup fails itself, you will meet hundreds of other people in startups in that industry. You'll go to another one. So a lot of people are afraid to go into industry, fearing that they'll never get a job. If you network, if you're nice to people, if you make connections and friends, you'll probably be okay. I know it's scary. But a lot of things that are worthwhile are scary. Public health wants you. The CDC, the World Health Organization, and Gates Foundation, all sorts of NGOs. They will take people from the sciences. They need people from the sciences. Public service wants you. Probably places you didn't think of, like the federal government, the NSF, and NASA. You can be a public servant for these people. They will take you. And boy, is the retirement package good. And lastly, science communication wants you. That's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Museums, media, and some new media outlets that have made it easier than ever to be a scientist known around the world. It was never so easy as it was today to be a public-facing scientist. So we're going to talk about that, but I want people to understand that you don't have to pick a column. You can go across the columns. You can go down the columns. It's kind of like winning a game of bingo. You can go in any direction that actually you like. Okay, so Science Communication 1. I'm only bringing this up because I work at the St. Louis Science Center now. Museums need scientists, but not just science museums, museums in flight, museums of industry. Any museum with any sort of science-related thing hires scientists to design exhibitions, run their programs, do event planning, teach. You will have to write grants. This is not a get-out-of-grant-free card. But it's a great way to make a living. You can go into traditional science communication. What I mean by broadcast is TV and radio. Yeah, it seems like it's dying, but really what it's doing is transforming. TV is becoming a more powerful medium now that it's online. They have lots of budgets to do cool, non-traditional things. Bill Nye's new science show is proof. Bill's going to get $10 million per episode to make Bill Nye Saves the World. But I still think you should watch Star Talk, because that's the show I write for. All right, lots of love, though, Bill. Newspapers, which are now largely online, like Ubata and I write for the Huffington Post. You can do it. You're free content. They love you. Of course, that's an interesting ethical conundrum, because your free writing boots someone who might have gotten paid to write. So if you need it to get into the field, please do it. Ubata and I have had that conversation. Please don't stay there. Please use it as a platform for jumping off to something else, but it's a great way to start. Huffington Post, other newspapers will take you as a writer for free good content. You'll sort of get your feet wet, you'll get on the ground, and then you can move on to something bigger and better. And then, of course, there's public speaking. If you enjoy it, there is no end of venues for you. And I stand as living proof of that concept. The last science communication thing I'm going to talk about is new media. We used to call columnists. We'd be guests. Anyone remember guest columnists from newspapers? Yeah? So that's basically what a blog is now, is you're a guest columnist, but a newspaper didn't have to run you. So you can put your opinions out there and just circulate them. No one can stop you. And you learn to write that way. And the more you write, the better you get. You can make podcasts. You can either make them yourself, or you can consult for them. That's what I do for Star Talk, is I write their episodes. I don't make their episodes. You can make videos, or you can go for independent media channels. There's all these little weird media programs. If you see a program you really like, see the production company and write them up and be like, if you ever do that again, I will totally help you. You're free to them. They like you. They'll write your name down and they will call you up. That's how it works nowadays. It's all about networking. So does anyone watch science on YouTube? Science channels? You subscribe to YouTube channels? Just you? What do you watch?
There's SciShow, and then I forget what the other one is called.
Okay. Yeah, but it's like, so they make it like a show. How many shows a week do they make?
3, 4.
Okay. So YouTube is, I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's an amazing venue.
And like most of you, I love the Saturn V rocket. I mean, who wouldn't love this beautiful marvel of engineering? But have you ever stopped to think about how it was assembled? And I don't mean inside the VAB. I mean, how did the pieces of the rocket get to the Kennedy Space Center in the first place? We're talking Saturn V logistics today on Vintage Space.
This is Amy Tatel. She makes this in her living room every week. YouTube pays her to do this.
Okay, before we get to
She's awesome. She's a one-woman show. She writes it, she shoots it, she edits it, she uploads it. And one day, she was so popular, she just hit 100,000 subscribers. YouTube called her up and said, we want to help you make your show better. What do you need? Do you need new cameras, new audio equipment, new editing equipment? What do you need? They actually helped her, because she is now their go-to for STEM video on YouTube. But she doesn't have to be. Someone else in this room could be. If you're like, you know, Vintage Space is great, but I'm going to actually talk about biology or the brain, and you want to do the brain show, no one can stop you. In fact, they might help you. Okay, so all this leads up to the point that life can be a series of adventures. I'm still not sure what a career is. Maybe it's what you had when you look back on your life and you're like fishing and you're 80 and you're like, yeah, that was my career. But I mean, this was mine. I did some research, I did some medicine, I've done public service, and I still do teaching and outreach. And that's the sum of my life, and it's okay. There are definite upsides to living this way, especially if you've got a more adventurous spirit. I do want you to know up front that there are downsides. There will be times when you look back and you're like, everyone I was in school with or my grad program with is now practicing medicine. Every single person in that photograph, except me, currently practices medicine. They go into work every day, they take care of patients, they go home. I still love them, I still talk to all of them, but they do medicine. That's what they do. All these fools I was up on simulated Mars with, they've gone back home to their glorious futures in something spacey. He's probably going to go to work for SpaceX. He went back to France to be the country's most famous astrobiologist. He's a space architect who'll probably be designing the hotels for Bigelow. So that's what they're going to do. While I'm here talking to you, I know what they're doing. I don't necessarily know what I'm doing next week. I'm okay with that. But I just want you guys to know. I mean, all the people I went to journalism school with now are doing journalism. Cool journalism. She was an architect who decided to get a degree in science journalism, and she now works for architecture companies writing about their buildings and sending it off to different. So she made her career that way. But she's still a journalist. I'm really not as much. I don't do it full time. I do it part time. So there are ups, there are downs, and sometimes it will feel very difficult. It'll feel like you're marching up a hill at a 45-degree angle in a 40-pound spacesuit and a windstorm. And that's not a metaphor. You'll be right. Oh, yeah, that was a long day. But it'll be completely, and people will always look at you with kind of awe. We were talking about that at lunch. People are going to look at you like you're a little weird because you didn't pick a thing that you did with your life. But like we were talking about at lunch, it's cool that you've got their attention. And second, it's an opportunity to say, yeah, I lived on simulated Mars, and I wore spacesuits, and I grew my own food, and I ate cyanobacteria, and I cleaned out the composting toilet. What? What about you? That strikes you as odd. Or it's a great time to start a conversation. Like, so, before I tell you about what I do, what do you like to do? Or what do you know about the brain? What do you know about Mars? And what do you know about space missions? What do you know about kidney disease? What do you know about epilepsy? So you start by asking them what they know, and then you explain to them why it is you do what you do. And they'll be like, oh yeah, that's cool. So if you don't like getting looked at, like I kind of enjoy it when people look at me like I'm an alien, because I kind of am. But if you don't enjoy that, you can turn it around into an opportunity to educate people. And that's a good moment too. So while adventures can definitely lead to unexpected outcomes, some of which are sad, it's only a temporary sadness, and your skills are never, ever, ever wasted. Everything I learned in my entire life from building satellites allowed me to build the petacycle that generated power from the bicycle that we ran, so that even though we didn't have solar, we could still charge our stuff. I did perform medicine on Mars, and as a journalist, I was able to make documentaries. Everything I had accrued, every skill I'd accrued, up until that point, I took with me. You don't leave it behind. It's not like, oh shoot, I forgot my wallet. No, it's a part of you, and it goes with you wherever you go, and it makes you a better person. And I'm still a photographer, darn it. I was standing outside with a loud spacesuit. This is our dome. That's Mars at its close past. That's the galaxy rising in the background. Me, my camera, and a trigger. No filters, no funny business with Photoshop. That was the photograph that was taken. 20 years later. Your life just needs to have a meaning for you. You're the only person you need to satisfy at the end of the day, the only person that you need to explain to. Just you. So, what's meaningful for me? I like getting people excited about science. I'll do it any way I can. I am not particular. These kids right here, I asked them who wanted to go to Mars. They all did, but not that guy. That kid in the front was like, oh, no. And I said, cool, so you'll be mission control. And he was like, yeah, good. But see, I'll talk to them. I'll go to science museums, and people will come running up to me. I saw you on TV. Yeah, right, you did. Let's have a hug. All right, I want to be there for the people in my life. That was my husband, who very gamely waited for me to come back from Mars. And I want to make my life a story worth talking about. That's what's important. So I focus on that. Your motivations can be anything. They're your motivations. Maybe it's something really profound. Or maybe you just like science. Or something else. Just remember, you're awesome does not always require an explanation. Maybe you just want to go wakeboarding on the canals of Amsterdam wearing a tuxedo. That's just your thing. That's cool, man. You don't have to explain it to everybody, but it is a good moment if you can say why you went to Mars, even though you ended up having to clean out the composting toilet, which was extremely gross. I know my crew members very intimately. No matter what you choose, you're going to have to dig your way out of it. It's going to be a challenge if you chose right. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be like, oh, I should have chosen something easier. No, no, no. That's not what you're going to say to yourself ever. If you chose right, it's going to be like, yeah, this is hard. And on the other side of this, I'm going to be a god. What kind of challenge do you want? It's going to be hard. How do you want your hard? How do you like your hard? Over hard? Hard over hard? Hard over easy? What kind of experience do you want? What kind of questions do you want to answer? We were talking about people showing up in labs saying, I want to play with the toys. It's like, whoa, what question are you trying to answer with the toys? Or what question do you want to help other people answer? So fundamentally, it's all about you and your motivations. You can make a path however you want to make it, or you cannot make a path and just let the path make itself, just kind of what I did. I'm here to answer your questions, any that you might happen to have. Thank you for listening.
Did you do a residency before you got into journalism?
I did part of a residency before I got into journalism. The residency program I was in was very traditional, and it was good, but it wasn't really for me. So when the chance to do actual like science and space came up, I transitioned over to that. I recommend doing a residency if you want to go into medical practice. I learned enough, I think, to care for patients to a certain extent, and I might want to go back someday. But yeah, I did some of it, and I think under certain circumstances I would have done more of it. But like again, I like to play the ball where it lies, so other things came up.
That was just so thrilling. I'm so glad I've heard about you before you came here. I'm a St. Louis girl, by the way.
Ah, very good.
And I'm a professor here.
All right.
And I have been very fortunate that I've been able myself to do a lot of unconventional things. So I did a 2-year medical residency without an MD in pediatric neurology, and they said no one comes here without an MD, and and they didn't think I had the background, so I talked my way into it, and I said you can kick me out when you want, and I held my own because I wanted to learn the skills. I wanted to learn some things for my research, but after 1 year in medical school, which I did while I was in PhD, it was so horrible. I couldn't stand it because they had a right and wrong for everything, and a lot of the answers that you had to answer to get a good grade were factually wrong. And I just felt that was unethical. Was I going to get a good grade, or was I going to tell them the truth and get a bad grade? I thought, and this is, now that was a long time ago, and I've helped try to change medical education, so I haven't given up. If we have any of our medical students or physicians here.
Yes, raise your hand if you're in
all
medical
evil,
school.
but-
Identify yourself. There you are, sir.
But one of the things that I think you're bringing forward is sort of blending from so many different worlds that there are a lot of different ways to have a good personal life and to contribute. But do you think that you would have the ability to help, and again, universities are our primary place where this occurs, the way in which we educate the next generation, which still is filled with presumptions about we know the right answers and you have to live up to our standards, rather than there are some people who know more about certain topics or methods and or who might be able to help you on your pathway. What could you do to help us not be so rigid in the way we educate the next generation of scientists?
Are you asking if I can cure arrogance?
Well, are there things you can say and do that will contribute, or how does that get in the way of, one is in the way, I mean, you have had a very contributory and fascinating life, but can one succeed in the more narrow silos and do the kind of creative exploring that you've done. And especially because you are now communicating broadly through your speeches and your writing. Can that help not only inspire individuals to turn them on to science, but make sure that when they go to pursue science, they don't get turned off?
Okay, all right, I think that's a good question. So I think it's a question about fundamentally why are we doing science?
Yes.
Good, okay, good. All right, I got the question now. So that, finding the answer to that question and articulating the answer to that question to ourselves keeps us from going crazy. Because we remember why we're pipetting, 500 million samples and studying for quals. And being able to know why we're here and articulate it allows us to get hired for jobs, get grant funding, get lab space, not get walking away from at a cocktail party when we're talking to a really pretty girl. Being able to know why you're doing what you're doing and express it articulately. Yeah, I hope I can help with that. I really do, for our own sake and for the sake of the world, because until we can really communicate what we do, why we do, there's always going to be this gulf between science and the community. And I've been trying to reach across and pull, but I think actually what I might start doing is pushing you all out. So you guys are going to get a brand new building, right? It's going to be amazing and beautiful. And it's going to be a great thing for the campus. And there's still going to be tens of thousands of people in the Roanoke area living below the poverty line. And they're going to see this beautiful new building, and they're going to wonder, why do I work 4 jobs, still can't afford health care, and they have this beautiful building? All right, it's not a question that makes sense, right? Because one does not have anything to do with the other, but they still see that and wonder, When I was 16, I went to Africa, and I was living in this ridiculous marble mansion that was owned by the embassy. Don't even ask me where we get marble in West Africa. But I was living in it, and there was a houseboy who was a 40-year-old man who would iron my jeans and bring fresh baguettes every morning. And the 2 tents on either side of the bare lots of this mansion were occupied by at least 8 or 9 people with little kids that had marasmus and kwashiorkor, the big bellies. And I remember the way they would look at us. Why do you get this and we get nothing, right? The world is a little convoluted, but I think we can help by actually giving back to the community. So we get this beautiful new building. I think we should take people around it. I think we should invite people to it. And I don't mean our academic buddies and partners. I mean people. Like kids from school. We should do school tours. Mommy and Daddy, I went to the beautiful new building today. Okay. So it's not just for them. It's for my kids too. It's for us. So I would encourage you guys, when you get in your new building or your labs now, make a partnership with the school, bring in school kids so they can see what you do, and ask questions. Send your freshman minions off to make it happen. Send your graduate students off to make it happen. Make it a postdoc requirement. Yeah, you can be a postdoc in my lab, but guess what? There's a little bit of a rider on that. Every postdoc takes in a group of school kids and mentors them. So, still want the job? I think we can, I'm going to have to push, I think is the answer to your question. I've been trying to pull, but it's a slow process. So somehow I'm going to find a way to push, I think is the answer. Questions are free until 4.
The composting toilet,
Yes.
so you cleaned it out because then you used it as compost for what you were growing?
The composting toilet, yeah. So that's a great question, and the answer is we could have if we'd had the space. That's the intent. So could I actually have a hand getting this back up here, because I think the system that does the video feed is locked up a little bit. So when we get back to the picture, I'll show you that it consists of a commode unit, like the kind you have in your own home, but without plumbing. The liquid goes down a drain, which then goes into an evaporation field. And most of your liquid excrement is water, just evaporates. What doesn't evaporate is an incredibly smelly but incredibly good nutrient. So on real Mars, you would probably use that as a plant nutrient. And then the solid matter is collected in a drawer, under which there's a heater, so it dries out. And what you do is you add to the barrel that collects it and dumps it into that drawer to dry out microbes. And then into the drawer itself, you add some sawdust. And really, within a matter of weeks, it becomes compost, like actual straight-up compost. And you could use that to grow plants in, if you had the space. Because you don't want to grow plants with that in the same space you're living in. No, there's no air system good enough to make that happen. But yeah, we definitely could have. Yeah. Yeah. Was there a question back here?
I have a question.
All right.
So every step of the way, I mean, you branched off everywhere basically, and we kind of talked about this before, but I want to know, like, were you presented with like at each branch off point, were you presented with several opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
and then had, chose the one that you can see yourself fulfilling some kind of overarching goal that you had in your life, or did you just take every single opportunity that came up and see where that took you?
Yeah, sometimes where I had choices, if all you want to really do is serve and make the world a better place and get people excited about science, you got a lot of choices, right? I hope you have a lot of choices. So there were actually a couple of times I was like, God, I don't know what to do. Do I go to medical school? Do I get the PhD I've been offered in Australia to try and, the Australians decided they wanted to cure dementia. They did the math and realized that if they don't, that 20% of their population will actually be required to care for the rest that have dementia by like 2035. So they went, oh, we better cure dementia fast. And they started hiring people like me to come try to use MRI machines to find early symptoms of dementia and prevent it. Do I take that fellowship? I'd gotten into a Master's of Public Policy program. Do I do that? I don't know. I actually made a SurveyMonkey survey, and I asked all my friends to vote. Not because I was going to do whatever they said, but because I was curious what they would say. And maybe they would have some feedback for me that would help me make up my mind. The ultimate mind maker-upper was the man who helped me make my final choice. Has anyone here heard of Partners in Health? Yeah? What's Partners in Health?
It's an organization started by Dr. Paul Farmer.
Yeah.
And it started in Haiti working with malaria. And he took a different approach of treating each patient as they came instead of viewing the population as a whole, which was a paradigm shift at the time. It's now global.
Yeah. So Paul Farmer started this nonprofit organization called Partners in Health, which now treats malaria and TB worldwide. Russia, Haiti, Peru.
Oh, yeah, it started with TB.
Yeah. I think they also treat malaria and a couple other infectious diseases. Yeah. So basically, his partner, Dr. Kwong, was giving a talk at Brown. And I walked up to him and I said, sir, I know you have a degree in anthropology and also in medicine. Why did you choose medicine? I'm sure you had many choices. He said, oh, yeah, so people would take me seriously. Really? Yeah. He said, if you can stomach it, go into medicine, because then people will actually take you seriously. And I wanted to serve, and I like medicine well enough, so that's honestly what I chose. And I love medicine, and I think I'm pretty good at it. But he said, all those other things will be great. I'm sure you'll be great at them, but you can go into them after with the MD, and you'll get further. So if you really want to serve, take one for the team and get the MD. You're listening back there, right? That's good. All right. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was wondering if you've been involved at all with the One Health initiative. I come from the other world of medicine, veterinary medicine.
Oh.
And I fully support your comment about MDs, because I tell you, if you have the V mixed in there, the opportunities are not the same. This One Health initiative has tried to bridge between the MDs who are, above God, and the veterinarians who are just
Not that guy.
just horse doctors. And I mean, those are the casual things that get thrown around, where the educations are really quite similar. So a lot of veterinarians have tried to get into all of these things that you've listed, and it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you've had any opportunity or had anyone reach out to you from my profession they keep trying. I can give you examples of many of the things that I've applied to and gotten things, but no thanks. We need an MD.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. First of all, big love to MDs. I would be terrified. Imagine not being able to ask your patient where the pain is. Where does it hurt? Our root. I would literally be frightened to do it. And veterinarians do everything that we do as doctors, but they don't get to ask the questions. So it just strikes me as an amazing field. For the veterinary school at St. George's University in the Caribbean, graduates some amazing people who do a ton of public health, veterinary public health.
Right.
Yeah, those are the people I went to school near. It's a very powerful veterinary program. And as far as I know, they do great public health work as veterinarians. That's the best resource I have for you. I wish I had better health, but I sympathize with getting locked out. Another warning, if you choose somewhat of a non-traditional career path, is sometimes you get locked out. People will say you haven't focused enough, you're weird. I mean, medicine doesn't even really want me back, to answer your question now, because I'm just too weird. You went and did what? I went and actually did space medicine for a year. Want me in your residency program? No. Pretty much not. So it's a risk we all take, but all I can say is keep trying and maybe contact the doctors directly who have shown themselves to not be above God. So the ones who are doing whatever it is you want to do, working in the organization, maybe write them directly, if that's possible. I know it's tough, but in my experience, if you do knock on enough doors, one will eventually open. It's super frustrating in the time that you're doing it, but eventually you make it through. As a journalist, trust me, this works. You just have to not give up.
I know we talked about this a little at lunch, but I was curious if you had any ideas on what the scientific community as a whole could do to try to prevent some of these boy who cried wolf headlines. Like every other year you get the cure to cancer has been found, the cure to cancer has been found, and if that were ever the case, that would be awesome, but it's never the case. And as a whole, the community gets very excited. They're, oh yes, the cure to cancer has been found, and then let down, and then very excited, and then let down. So for me, it's easy to understand why a lot of the general population doesn't want to fund science the way that they used to, because it seems like over and over you get built up and let down, built up and let down. And I feel like a lot of that's got to do with mainstream media portraying things the way they do, but how can we as scientists change that?
It's very erosive, right? Because it seems like they're being lied to. It seems like you're getting the rug pulled out from under you. So remember how I was talking about pushing? I'm going to try and push the scientific community out into the regular world. I think we need to do that with the media. We wait for them to pull. And we were talking about this at lunch. We just need to push. And we need to push back. So when we see stuff like that, call up the author and be like, your piece was great. Can I give you the information to write a better one? It's free to them, right? They didn't have to find you. You've got a nice shiny degree behind your name too. You work at a great institution. Be like, yeah, you wrote that article. I can give you a much better one than that one. So crying BS on an article, be polite, be like, it was very well written. I know a ton of people who disagree, but I can give you a great pitch. We have cured this many kinds of cancer. We have this many to go.
Would you do that with a writer, though, or would you do it with CNN or HuffPost or whatever it is? Like, would you do it directly with the
Yeah, you'll have more luck with the individual journalist. Be like, I saw that article you wrote, thought it was super well written, wanted to pitch you another. And once you've got your pitch together and they don't take it, just start sending it to other journalists. Or no one picks it up, write it yourself and put it on HuffPo, because they'll run just about anything and then tweet it out there. But you will probably get a journalist that will pick you up. But if you see an article and you get mad, that's good. That's good. Take the article, deconstruct it, write a better one, and start sending it out. Yo, this is for free. Just be prepared, because people will then know who you are and will come looking for you. I think that's a good thing, but you just have to be prepared for it. So yes, there is something we can do. Every time we see one of those, don't just call BS on Twitter. Fix it. Fix the article. Richard Feynman got his Nobel Prize because he fixed something. Does anyone not know the story of why Richard Feynman got his Nobel Prize? It's cool to raise your hand. Okay, cool. Who would like to explain it in very simple terms? This is about
physics.
Okay, simpler than that. No, okay. So yes, someone tried to explain why basically particles hang out together. And Richard Feynman read a paper and was like, I don't buy that argument at all. So he actually tried to do the math himself and couldn't. So he rewrote the paper correctly and won the Nobel Prize for something called parity. So that's, in simplest terms, is you can fix it. What do we do about it? It's broken. We're scientists. We fix it. And that's the back-end solution. The front-end solution, though, is we push information to the media. We push good information to the media. We find writers who are reputable, and we feed them information. There's probably a good automated way to do this, and I probably have to figure out what it is and set it up so that every time someone writes an article, a glass of wine replaces an hour at the gym a day, 15 people in occupational therapy get pinged to please write this author right away. But then again, that's back end, it's already gone out. So maybe what we need to do is just build relationships with the media community and just keep pushing stuff on them so they don't have to go to these monkeys. They come to us first. I'd say that's the ultimate solution. build a community relationship with the media. So they're not fishing, we're delivering the basket of fish to their doorstep. They'll take it. Does that seem like a reasonable solution? Yeah. I think maybe that's, who knows, maybe that's my job. And then, well, actually, I had the young man back there. Could I circle back to you? Thank you.
So,
Doctor. I'm trying to get you on the mic here.
what advice would you give a curious student about how to get involved in journalism, and what role might you advise them to try to strive for, like as a part-time, like blogger, like a columnist once a month? Like, what are some things that you think might fit in a student's life, and and how would you advise to get to that stage?
Sure. So you got to find something you are happy to talk about all the time. So is there something you love about medicine in particular? Infectious disease, neurology, pediatrics, OBGYN?
Like healthcare markets, insurance?
Healthcare markets, insurance. What an interesting niche. Whew. Okay, so you're happy to, you would write a column on healthcare markets insurance once a month?
No.
Okay. So find the thing that you want to write about. Maybe it's something more fundamental than healthcare markets insurance. Maybe you want to write about the cost of medicine. Could you write about that once a month? Okay. So then you find the thing. I want to write about the cost of medicine. The cost of medicine interests me. Once a month, I'm going to find something that costs an outrageous amount of money, and it's really miffing me off. I'm going to research it and write an article, and I'm going to throw it on HuffPost in my column, Cost of Medicine. Or I'm going to get in a group with a couple of people like Ubata, and every week one of us is going to take a column. It'll be his this week. It'll be mine next week. And you just commit to it. Like, this is my monthly column. This weekly is better. But I know that's hard, especially when you're in medicine, you have rotations. But if you can pull out a monthly column, then you can definitely do it on HuffPost. You can definitely probably even find other magazines that will take a month, like monthly magazines, monthly healthcare magazines. You can even send it to the editorial sections of medical magazines, and that looks really good. You got published in whatever health magazine, writing this editorial piece about the cost of this new drug. Where does it come from? So basically you're just explaining costs of procedures, of drugs, of hospitalization. That would be a real service, I think. Does anyone really know why stuff in medicine costs so much? It's really complicated, and the answers are different for everything. Why in my admission to the emergency room was I charged for 10 things I never got? That's a great column right there. It would explain a lot to a lot of people. So does that make sense? All right, do you think you could do it? He says. Let me know if I can help. I'll have my cards up front. Okay, back to you.
Yeah, well, when you were saying about pushing back on things, an example that I was thinking of as you were speaking was this prolonged, decades-long argument about vaccinations causing autism. And it's been disproved, and yet the county actually that I come from in Washington State has a 52% vaccination rate. So how do you get the people who have already chosen what it is they want to read to, how do you reach those people when they won't read what you put out there?
All right, so we had a great conversation about this at lunch, smiling. All right, what did we decide during lunch?
You actually have to listen to them, because even though to us it seems a lot of their concerns are not at all valid, there are actually some legitimately valid concerns out there. The recent example that I brought up in the discussion was the most recent, or not the most recent, but the first rotavirus vaccine had a slight incidence of intussusception. And this was a modern vaccine introduced in the 2000s. As a parent, if I heard that my kid could have diarrhea for a week or potentially life-threatening intestinal disorder, I think I probably wouldn't vaccinate as a concerned parent. And that's a legit concern, and there are parents that have these concerns. That doesn't mean that they're right across the board on all vaccines, but if you just dismiss their concerns out of hand or treat them as if they're stupid for having these concerns, they're not going to want to listen to you. So you have to kind of try to give them, I'm not saying equal validation, because I think a lot of the equal validation that we give some very dangerous theories lately is also a very dangerous thing, but you need to at least get them to feel like you're listening, and then you can talk to them. And you might have to talk to them differently than you would grad students or medical professionals, and that's important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. America has, I think, 50,000 illiterate people, 50 million illiterate people, 40 million functionally illiterate people, has an 8th grade reading level and a 6th grade science level. So whoever you're talking to, writing for, That's the first thing you should decide is to whom are you speaking and to whom are you writing. And if you want everyone to be able to read it, you're headed for the 6th grade level. Plain speak, you can just look it up online. How to write in plain speech. It's super important. And part of the gulf that comes between science and the community is we don't write in plain speech. We write in fancy speech. Long sentences with subordinate clauses. No. Most people will get lost at the first comma. It's going to be short sentences, simple words, simple ideas, very linear. So if you're writing for the common person, you're going to write differently than if you're writing for your friends, for academia. It's okay to write that way, just know who you're writing for, and who your audience will be is based on your writing. It's a decision you should consciously make. Apropos of those comments, it's not easy, but I think we need to start a conversation. Let's give these people a voice and say, you have concerns, I have concerns, we're both concerned. I'm concerned about people getting sick from vaccine-preventable diseases. You are too, no doubt. You don't like the idea of your kid getting measles and mumps. Let's have a joint column where you say your concern and I say my concern, and we talk about it in public. And people see us talking about it in public. Have a public discussion about it in writing. And after you're comfortable with that, I would have public discussions on video to show that it's okay. It's not actually matter and antimatter. There will not be a giant explosion resulting in lots of freed energy. For somebody who is pro-vaccine and anti-vaccine, honestly, I think it's just, this is a concern that people, at the nugget of it, everyone's afraid of the same thing, and that's their kid dying. And if that's what we're all concerned about, let's just talk about that and build from there. What are we really worried about? Okay, me too, good. And let's just start from there. And even at the end you don't agree, you agree that fundamentally we're trying to achieve the same thing, which is not harming our children. Great. Once we're on the same boat, we can decide the course, but let's get on the same boat first. That would be my answer. Does that make sense? And if you have people back in your community in Washington who can do that work, please ask them to do that work. I live in a little enclave where everybody is woohoo agreement, but I'm going to have to get out of that and do that work. It's not going to be easy, but I think it'll be really rewarding for everybody. Yes, madam.
Elaborating or building on your suggestions, increasingly NIH is seeking applicants who will do community-based participatory research.
Mm-hmm.
There are formal guidelines. Barbara Israel is best known for articulating what they are. And it's where you have diverse members of communities impacted. Like, I love the way you articulated listening to people. But from the beginning of designing the research, collecting the data, analyzing it, interpreting it, and reporting it not only to the most elite scientific journals, which are essential, don't forget that, but to all the other groups of people in modalities and approaches that reach them, you build them into your budget, and they become co-owners, and that's a method of increasing the public's confidence in science. Many scientists don't want to waste their time dealing with that many people from that many backgrounds and having to explain things differently and over again, or having someone nominate doing something that takes you off the scientist, one scientist off course. But NIH values that and wants applications almost in any topic that engage patients, clinicians, the general public, teachers, parents, as part of your research team. And you can spend some of your money paying them and working with them and having them be collaborators. And we've yet to see how much it improves our science or the receptivity to the findings so that people behave consistent with what the data show. But for many people, when you say research shows that, they just tune you out. But it is an approach that increasingly has gained respect, and that we probably insufficiently train our scientists to be able to enact.
Yeah, most people, I mean, she was just talking about this public service column. Yeah, it's public service. You can make a total living working for the NSF, explaining science to people as part of your research job. You get money for research, but you also get money for outreach and public education. And that's a really cool, pattern that we started to fall into. It's tough to break yourself in two to be working at a lab all day and then trying to go home to figure out how you're going to tell 3-year-olds what the meaning of the word research is? It's tough. I would suggest partnerships. So if you're going to do this, you and the person, your best friend in the lab next door, and the other, like 3 or 4 labs together can probably do it well, rather than trying to do it all yourself. So I applaud you for trying it. If you decide to try it, thank you and congratulations. Please work with somebody else to get that work done and take some of the burden off yourself. Because I can see people who are going, yeah, I'd like to try that. It's like, it's exhausting work. I love it and it's exhausting. I wish I had a partner in it right now. I'm going to try to find one. Please work with each other on this. Because together we can help ourselves be articulate to the little 3rd graders who were trying to convince research is okay, not scary. It doesn't mean you're going to get a shot. And that's really where we are. People don't, research says blank. Research can say just about anything. Research can say black is blue and up is down. So people just don't know what research means. So that's where we start, by telling people what research is. Like telling people what cancer is. It's not a thing, right? It's 10,000 things. So you start by opening up their mind about the fact that research the word doesn't really mean anything. That what kind of research? Who did it? Where did they do it? What were they looking for? You get people to start critically thinking. That's our gift as scientists, critical thought. Not the physics or the chemistry, the biology, but the process of thinking. And so if we can help people think better, we will improve the world. We can do that. We can give that. So it's getting close to 4, and I want to wrap it up here. So science says that you only take away a maximum of 3 things from any talk. So if you only take away one thing from this talk, I'd like it to be the following. This attitude is amusing, but not especially helpful, especially if you look around to the state you live in. Please be helpful. Whatever people believe or don't believe, listen to them, be respectful of them, ask them questions about themselves and their concerns and why they believe what they believe, and try to find a common ground to start there. Please, if there's one thing you take away from this talk, is you have the capacity to be helpful in a way that nobody else does as the scientific community. So be helpful. Ask people what they want to know about and tell them in words that they can understand. Thank you.